Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I am Veronica Rosenberg. I am the manager of customer success here at Apptentive, and I am so excited that everybody's here to join us for a drive-through with Dunkin. I'd like to introduce Andy Addis. He's the senior product manager at Dunkin. Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Veronica, you bet.
So let's get started. Before we kick things off, I just want to put out a few housekeeping notes. If you have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please submit them there. And then a bunch of people with their signups actually already submitted questions, so we'll get to as many of these as we can. If we can't, just make sure to include your name. That way we can follow up with you later. So let's get started. Andy, first and foremost, can you tell everybody a little bit about your role at Dunkin?
Yeah. So hey, everyone. I'm Andy Addis. I'm currently a senior product manager for the Dunkin and Baskin-Robbins mobile app and websites. Kind of started my career a little under 4 years ago at Dunkin, and I started more in the support role, if you will. And from there, I kind of moved shadowing the product team and kind of worked with the product team a little bit further. And then just more recently was promoted to senior manager and also now oversee the Baskin-Robbins side of the house as well.
Wow. So you started in support. You started in this position at Dunkin of gathering customer feedback. How did that inform your interest in gathering customer feedback and what you do now?
Yeah, so even before Dunkin', I came from a support background. And so support's always been part of my blood, if you will, or part of my career. And so I've been used to looking and understanding customers a lot. And so that's certainly helped drive, one, how I started at Dunkin', then two, how I've grown as a product manager and how I kind of grow our team and grow our product. So I think that the biggest thing from looking at support or understanding that is really knowing your customer. So we use Apptentive for one to help gather that feedback, but looking at not just our Apptentive feedback, but also calls from going into our consumer care, reviews on the App Store, Twitter, and any other source of feedback where users can share their feelings on Dunkin' or Baskin. We'll take that and drive ultimately our new products.
Okay. So at the forefront of everybody's world right now, right? We're all working from home, which is why we have these great digital backgrounds,
Yes.
is COVID. So what have been some things that the team at Dunkin' has done in order to enhance a digital experience during this time?
Yeah, so I would say one of our biggest things that we've done for COVID is change up how we handled curbside checkout for our app. And so we actually had a flavor of curbside before COVID all started, and I know not many companies had it. We had it. It was actually a project that I worked on when I first joined, 3.5, 4 years ago. And it was really more of like a pilot, a test. We had a really small number of stores who had it set up, and it was also required a bunch of operational setup, a camera for the crew to know when a car pulls up, a designated space, the lines painted, signage, stuff like that. And then there was the integration from the app of really just let us know that you're checking in or you're getting to the store via curbside. And we pretty much had to overhaul that. I think we were actually probably ready to kill that off a few months ago. Instead, we revived it. We totally overhauled it, added, we pretty much had to adapt what we needed to do and how it needed to work for stores that couldn't get the camera set up or couldn't get the designated curbside spot set up. So we had to adapt, and how we did that was really just we kind of took a look at and found that what could we do to not have the video or not have any of that camera stuff set up, and what we found is that adding both like the vehicle make and vehicle type just as a selection for the user. Being able to pass that through and add it to the receipt, allowing for the crew to see it and know that, hey, I need to go to an SUV, a white SUV versus a black sedan or something like that. And that helps kind of just open it up. There's still a lot more improvements we can do with it. Happy to talk more if you're interested.
Yeah, I do want to get to that, but before we do, it does sound like implementing something like Curbside, it's like you just described, it's not just happening in the app. That's just like a small
No.
fraction, but
Yep.
there's operations team, franchisees, and then marketing and the mobile product team. So how do you coordinate across all of these teams to take something so big and make it work?
Yeah, the culture at Dunkin is certainly very collaborative, and we work with everyone. As you said, operations and marketing are probably the two biggest teams that we work with collaboratively on all this. And I kind of alluded to it before, but the first thing we had to understand was how this has to work from a crew side, like from the operational side. How do stores know, or what do they need to help them be successful and not slow down the rest of the orders coming in or the rest of the traffic going through at a Dunkin'. And so first we kind of worked with operations to understand kind of how they need it set up on their side. And then we took a look at the technology side and said, like, what's doable in such a short, time frame. We were trying to push this out within weeks. And then we went kind of to marketing and brought that to them and kind of worked together to say, here's kind of all these limitations or kind of the path that we have to follow, and work with marketing and our creative agency to create ultimately what we have in the app today of just this streamlined method, kind of satisfying all those other requests from these different teams.
Okay. So yeah, curbside, I think in general, as you alluded to, is something that applies outside of QSRs. It's something that we've seen customers implement in my regular life. It's like a big part of how people are shopping these days.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what went well, since this is something you actually did pre-COVID, and what you would improve about the process?
Yeah, time is certainly always nice. So if you haven't done curbside yet, I think looking at how other people are doing, I think it's a great example of everyone is kind of doing it now. So what we're doing too is just exploring and trying it ourselves, trying other apps, trying other companies, just understand how it's working and what works well, what doesn't work well. Doing our own curbside process too as a real user. What didn't make sense when we went through it. And so one of the things actually with that is we found that we were getting reports from stores that they had 3 white SUVs showing up. We had nowhere in the app to say like, hey, I'm in a Ford SUV versus Chevy SUV. So we actually have that feature rolling out this week too to add the vehicle make in there as well, so that users can provide a little more information there. The crew doesn't get confused when they walk outside, and it's not just one white SUV. Now hopefully that gives them a little bit more direction on where to go. But really just kind of playing around with it, doing it yourself, and trying to understand the different excuse me, the different benefits, what others are doing, and then apply it to your business model.
So if you're testing with other companies like Sephora, if I want to test, you'll reimburse me for my purchases, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the ones that I'm testing too, is Sephora.
Perfect. So moving a little bit to the mobile experience specifically, what have you changed about both checkout and payment to help meet guests where they're most comfortable?
Yeah, it was actually on our roadmap, but it kind of worked out well with timing and everything. And it was adding Google Pay and Apple Pay to our on-the-go checkout experience. And I think the biggest one with that for us was also adding that to our guest checkout experience, so a user doesn't have to create or enroll in a Perks account.
Mm-hmm.
That helped us for a number of reasons. One, as everyone, at the start of it all too, was nervous, like can I walk into a store, can I not? It allowed that contactless payment, and it allowed us to not say, hey, like we don't really worry about you signing up for an account right now, or we don't want to have that be a hindrance of you coming to Dunkin'. So download the app, try out or use our on the go, use the order ahead service, and you can do it pretty seamlessly with Google and Apple Pay if you have that already installed. And so one, it helps us just get that experience out there. It satisfies, I think, the customer need of not having to walk into the store, allows that contactless payment, but also then kind of shows them a little bit about how the app is working, and then we can capitalize on that later on.
Nice. And then what about reopening efforts? So this is something that is different state by state, sometimes even city by city. So what is your team doing to focus on those efforts?
Yeah, that's where kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of just like that customer feedback and understanding what your customers want out of you as a company. So I think we did really well early on. We actually utilized Apptentive to push out surveys every other week or every week. I forget exactly what it was, Just kind of ran it for 24 hours to get a pulse of what customers think we're doing well or not doing well, and getting that feedback, and using that data to help us drive the changes or the new updates that we're going to go do post-COVID, or our reopening efforts. And a lot of that, when we saw plenty of stuff that was, just crew stuff, crew specific things that we can't control, but saw a lot of good feedback about, improving curbside. Like, the example came through from there too of, how do you distinguish my car from someone else's car? So that came up a lot. So I think focusing on that. I'd also add too that you mentioned state by state, and it can be different there. So we also look at the data too by area. So we look at designated market areas, how we kind of separate all of our kind of zones out, if you will. So analyzing data from Chicago to Boston, which is where I'm located, you may see some different data there, and so you may have to understand that. I'm not saying that we can necessarily adapt the app to do different things in those different areas, but maybe, some feature may work really well for Boston, but may not work for Chicago. And we have to kind of balance that out and make sure we're satisfying both of those use cases.
Yeah, I think just being able to break it down in each of those areas at least gives you that base level understanding. And like you mentioned with curbside, a lot of people in New York City don't have cars. How did you adapt that to those? You didn't need a parking spot, but you need other things.
Yeah, and that's actually a good example. We like curbside, no parking spot outside, but how do you do that? So like the simplest thing that we came up with to satisfy it quickly was you couldn't walk into the store, but we gave an option in our curbside checkout for I don't have a car, right? So it satisfies those users who are walking up, maybe riding a bike, something like that. It's kind of a quick little win, but we've definitely seen some good traffic just from the foot traffic. They don't want to go inside, but we adapted the language to say meet you at the front door rather than stand in the parking spot kind of thing.
Okay. So talking a little bit about your roadmap, you, just like everybody else in March, had your whole roadmap blown up. How did you pivot to adapt to the things that have changed in our world during that time?
Yeah, a lot of communication, I would say, and just working that cross-functional team again. So we work very closely with our marketing team, and we have weekly meetings with them, Slack channels set up. And we're constantly adapting our roadmap, reviewing that feedback again from all these different sources, and trying to figure out how does what we need to do right now because of COVID, how does that reflect from what we had planned for 2020? How does that change from that? Or how can we adapt our plans that we had for 2020 to now factor in everything going on with COVID? How can we change up, whatever the feature may be, so that we can actually still push out our goals and what we were trying to do, but then also adapt and not, screw up our business model because people don't want to come to Dunkin because we did something wrong, or they don't like how we reacted to COVID.
What do you think is the most important metric that product managers should measure right now?
For me, again, because of my background, it's going to be that customer sentiment, customer feedback, and kind of getting that feedback loop. I think now more than ever, it's all more real, if you will, because if ultimately users don't want to come back to your store because they don't like how you've handled COVID, or they don't like how how you're helping them digitally or helping them do contactless payments, stuff like that, then you ultimately won't have those customers, and then where's your business kind of thing, right? So I think understanding what your users want out of you, especially during this time, is the biggest kind of metric and biggest thing to watch for, and track as well. So, like I said, we did those weekly COVID surveys to get that pulse. And what we found is that, people were generally happy, but there was some great feedback in it, and that helped drive ultimately back into our roadmap too.
One of the things we see at Apptentive too is that when you ask people for feedback, they're generally really grateful that you've asked, as opposed to making assumptions or just driving without wondering what's working for them.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like I've seen that too, just kind of reading some articles of people not doing that, or now just starting to ask. I started getting emails, from different places being like, how do you want us to react? It's like, feels like the boat a little missed there. I guess now, better late than never. But yeah, I think, we definitely had the right move of kind of starting early, and getting that feedback.
As your former customer success manager, I used to pull out anytime there was something positive and send it over to your team, just
Yes.
so that you knew that there was also like people
Yes.
being
There's also
grateful.
good stuff.
There wasn't
Yep.
just
Absolutely.
all the time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of PMs on the call. What are some tips that you would give to them, especially ones who are in the food and bev or QSR space like you?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I think now, I mean, I think I just go back to like knowing your customer, and understanding them, and really like be a customer yourself. I think often I'm guilty of forgetting that too, of like go out there and be a customer. I was doing some testing for something last week. So I was just going through the drive-through a bunch of times, and every time I went through, there was just, as a customer, like things that I noticed about, being able to pull up the QR code in the app, and different things of where we could make improvements. So be a customer yourself of your own product, and then be a customer of other products as well, because it will just help you grow and help you get good feedback to drive back into your own product.
I love that. So the most important question of the day before we get to the group questions, and I'll share mine too, but what is your go-to Dunkin' order?
Yeah. So ironically, I don't drink coffee. Never have. So actually, when you come into Dunkin', that's like one of the questions, like when they send out, like the welcome Andy to the team, what are you drinking? What are you scooping? And so if I had to pick a drink, it'd be a hot chocolate. Love chocolate. So hot chocolate for me. Maybe the hint of the Oreo hot chocolate is always a delicious spin on it. And then I'm also eating the sweet black pepper bacon egg and cheese sandwich on a croissant is my go-to. Guilty of that as well.
Sounds great.
What about you?
So I love when you do the Girl Scout cookie flavors. That's the Thin Mint coffee, my favorite. But generally, like just a medium iced coffee, a little bit of cream, no sugar, and then a chocolate donut with sprinkles, obviously.
Nice.
The s'mores donut that was out a couple of years ago, I still think about that.
That was a good one.
All right, so that was great, especially the donut content. But let's get to some listener questions. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for submitting questions. So can you first talk about what's the single most effective and impactful use of Apptentive's mobile tool set for your team?
Yeah, I would say it probably are the surveys. It's actually a mix. We use surveys and notes a lot, but I would say from like for COVID specific, I think our surveys were the biggest help because that allowed us to get the feedback and understand kind of the pulse of the customer.
Okay. And then what would you say is the most complex experience or campaign that you've run on your mobile app using Apptentive?
Probably our multi-factor authentication push. So big in security, want to make sure our users have secured accounts. So to help with that, we used Apptentive Notes to remind customers or make it easy for customers to enable multi-factor authentication. And we saw great growth with that too, just by putting it in front of them and having them help us secure their account.
I remember that rollout. How do you manage your portfolio of innovation ideas? So this person asked, where does it all go? How do you access that content? And especially things that maybe you didn't put on the menu that are archived.
Yeah. I don't know if I can answer the last part about the menu innovation. That's not under my view, although I'm interested too if that person ever finds out what we do. But from a product or digital side of it, I think we've struggled with this too, because everyone has great ideas and kind of where do you put all that. We just recently, like kind of a month or two ago, created a new Jira board. We called our Dunkin feature request Jira board. And it's really for the product team, for the IT product team and our marketing team to kind of work as a kind of dumping ground for ideas. But then also we use that in our weekly meeting to run through those, review those, and prioritize those as well. And that's been really helpful, trying to come up with ways to make that better. But really just kind of getting it out there on a Jira board or Trello board And so that way you have comments, you have tracking, you have the history of like when it was open, can attach stuff. It doesn't get lost anywhere. That's worked really well for us.
Okay. So I'm going to take a question that somebody submitted live today. Did you build your curbside functionality in-house, or are you using a third party?
Yeah, so we are in-house just last year or so. Dunkin secured our code base from the vendor that we were working with. And so we actually just completed kind of that transition really right at the start of COVID, which was kind of perfect timing, if you will, for us, because it allowed us to be a little bit more nimble and probably save our vendor from getting too annoyed with us. Now it's just our internal teams who are annoyed with us. Yeah, so it was all built in-house.
A lot of drive-through curbside questions. Are there any plans to improve the drive-through experience, such as speed of service or any new integrations you can discuss?
I can't discuss everything, but yeah, we are looking to figure out how to improve it. I think what we've seen, if you drive past, if you've been out driving during this, you'll see Dunkins, you'll see Starbucks, you'll see other places along highways or roads which just have like 30 to plus cars in the drive-through line. And so we're definitely looking at speed of service in our drive-through in particular, and how we can improve that using technology, whether that's on the app side or in the store as well.
So somebody asked, some features we've implemented are bets on future based on the little we know about the post-COVID situation. How do you prioritize these and iterate efficiently on them?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. I think it's easier to do when you have an internal team. I think it's a lot harder to do if you have a third-party vendor doing your development. So I would say I can kind of speak to both, and I can't speak to COVID bets necessarily, but I definitely recall when we were with the vendor model, it being a lot harder to do those types of features and whatnot. I would say now it's really easy. I'd say not easy, but it's a prioritization point, but it also allows us to be a little bit more flexible. So we have those internal resources where we kind of have put time aside to allow for some of that exploration. And that's actually what we have like an exploration board in Jira, and use that for kind of our two dev leads. And if we're kind of playing around or trying to figure out how we can do something new, like iOS 14, is there anything new that came out with iOS 14 that we can take advantage of? We'll kind of punt that over to our dev leads and kind of give them a high level idea and see if we can make a pretty quick POC, scrappy POC, see if it sticks, see if it makes sense to line up and push out.
Let's see. Was marketing receptive to your asks, or was there any internal convincing to be made that product had the answers to customers' needs?
I'd say for us, no, or yes, they were receptive. We didn't really have a lot of trouble with it. We work very closely together, so it came from both sides. And sometimes it comes from them pushing on us, sometimes it comes from us pushing on them. So yeah, I think we work really well together from that respect, and especially during this time of trying to understand overall like what our customers are asking for. I think we were generally aligned to what the goal should be.
And similar, how do you address survey feedback, and do you get together as a team to review?
We don't right now. Well, kind of. We have someone on our marketing side who sends out kind of daily reports too, just kind of trends of what we're seeing. We're in the process of trying to make that feedback loop better. Admittedly, it's not great right now. We're not doing as much as we could be doing. So we're getting better there, and hopefully, with time, we'll be able to actually gather all that, see all the trends, and then do something about it. I don't think we get the full picture of it right now.
Okay. What digital strategy do you employ to provide the non-app user the same customer experience?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. I mean, obviously, our product team is specifically focused on app and web. So I guess one side of it from a non-app user is exploring what we can do on the web, if anything, but then also exploring and working with our store systems teams to understand what we can do in the store whether that's at the drive-through or I guess once we get back into the store. An example of in-store would be our order status board that we have and have used. We're trying the same thing at the drive-through too, of making sure that we can kind of show the user what they're ordering. So we're testing out some digital menu boards in the drive-through as well, to allow the user to kind of review what their order was before they pull forward, just to make sure we got it right.
Okay. Let's see. Has your team had to change how you function and collaborate with other departments in order to execute faster, like in how you message to customers or build new survey content to keep up with all the COVID changes?
Yeah, we definitely have had to adapt, given we're not all in an office. We're not all in the office. I'd say we've gotten more people on Slack. So Slack for us internally was always kind of just more of a IT, started with IT. We pushed that out to, some people in marketing, some people in other divisions. So I mentioned those COVID surveys. We brought another team onto Slack and had a channel set up to kind of collaborate on what the question should be. Once we got responses, what do we do about those responses? So yeah, we definitely had to adapt and add people to new technologies that we have and use.
Anything else you and your team do to stay connected while you're working from home and also like avoid employee burnout?
Yeah, so I think recognizing everyone's human. If you have to jump out in the middle of the day to go do something or need to go for a walk, I think as a manager, I try to do that for my team. I have to do it for myself sometimes too. We were dog sitting, me and my wife, a few weeks back. So, every day at 12, I try to go for a walk with the dog, and not just for the dog, but for me too, to get out. Cause usually I'm a workaholic, so I'll work a lot, but then, just having fun channels on Slack or being able to set up, happy hour Zooms. I think that kind of helps as well. And admittedly, I have to set one up for my team. We haven't done one in a while.
This is a good reminder.
This is a good reminder. Yep.
Our team does a weekly where we work together, but we're all remote, obviously. So we just sit on
Nice.
Zoom and kind of like chat and ask each other questions. So it mimics an office environment a little bit. Yep. I think everybody finds their own thing.
That's a good one. Yeah. And I'd say too, if you're a manager out there too, a people manager too, recognizing that not doing it at 5, do it early, do it during the workday too, and kind of take a break. I think, stopping for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, have a drink and hang out with everyone. It's just a good break of the week.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a great note to end on too. Cool. Thank you so much, Andy, for the time and, these thoughtful answers. And I appreciate everybody who asked questions. We obviously weren't able to get to all of them, so I apologize, but we'll be sure to follow up with you directly if you've included your name. And if anything else arises, just respond to our email follow-up and we'll get that answered for you as well. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thank you to Andy, and have a great rest of your day.
See you, everyone. Thanks, Veronica.
Bye.